Live from a bunker in the heart of the Ozarks, a podcast that doesn't even know how to use a calendar anymore. It's Sif Pop. Welcome to Sif Pop Weekly, streaming live. Most weekends are available to download later in your podcast feed, unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get perks.
Patrons get those perks.
Ow!
I'm your host, Aaron Dicer, and he knows 2020 movies forwards and backwards. It's Andrew Ormsby, ladies and gentlemen.
Ahoy!
And then Yoha. Sorry, just a little
Yoha!
Each week we'll chat about movies, television, and whatever else from the pop culture universe is on our minds. And please welcome our guest this week. He's fully in the zone, but refuses to be a lost soul. It's Jonathan Paula, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello. Good afternoon. Glad to be here. And, I'm all on board the Ahoy train. I think sea shanties are making a clear comeback right now.
Clearly, yes.
I don't know if you guys are on TikTok, but they are blowing up over there, and I am all for it.
Yes, I am not on TikTok as much as I'm sure I should be. But yeah, I've heard the sea shanties are a real big thing right now. So I don't have one prepared. I apologize.
What do you do with the drunken sailor?
Guys, this is exciting. We have reached part 2 of the Sifties, and we are going to take a journey through our favorite performances, our favorite moments, and our favorite movies of the calendar year 2020. Now, that is an interesting thing because of the pandemic. It is shifted a little bit for award season, but we're going to try to do our best to do calendar year. So apologies if something is technically a 2021 movie. It's kind of hard to know with some of these things. In fact, we spent our members-only pre-show kind of talking about what a strange award season it has been to try to figure out kind of what goes where. But I'm really excited. I should also mention we will finish the show, as we finish every year, Sifties, with the official Sif Pop countdown to number 1, based on all of the contributors and guest gurus that we have on the podcast and on the website, siftpop.com. And we'll talk a little bit more how that works as we get a little bit closer to that. How are you guys feeling? Like, what are general thoughts on the movies from the year 2020?
Well, straight away, I picked a 2019 release at some point in my list, and I'm worried that might be disqualified.
No, we won't DQ you.
Because technically, it was a festival release in 2019.
Sure.
Wide in 2020.
I wonder if we have the same movie. Because I have one of those too. It was released right at the end of 2019, but then everywhere else it was at one festival, but everywhere else it was 2020.
I think sort of for all intents and purposes, kind of a 2020 release. And with such a dearth of quality films this year, I kind of wanted to put it in here just so we could talk about it. And I actually looked at my spreadsheet here, Aaron. I know you'll love this.
I do.
Of the last 10 years, 2020 is my lowest overall rating of a 5.93, which is not great, but it is what it is. And I'm still excited to talk about the
cream of the crop.
The movies that did stand out, the movies that actually are in my highest bracket.
Yeah. We always deal with this a little bit. I was even thinking, because I recently went through, thanks in much part to you, Jonathan, and have really embraced Letterboxd, and so I went through and updated my Fave 41 lists
Nice.
for the last 20 years. So since the year 2000.
Good gosh, how long did that take?
Well, when you've already got, then again, this is the reason I embraced Letterboxd fully within the last couple months. I found the upload feature.
Yeah.
And so I already had all those lists in spreadsheets. And so it was very easy to upload them and then move stuff around. But what I discovered was how many movies I had in a list for a year were actually from the year before, technically, or, whatever it might be. And so I kind of shifted some things around for me. From here on out, I'll just, use my lists the way I have them. But if I'm doing my fave 41 movies from 2006 on Letterboxd, I kind of want all of them to technically be that year. And so it kind of shifted things a little bit for me. But it's always a little bit of a thing, but it's definitely more of a thing this year. So, Andrew, what about you? How is 2020 movie-wise in general been for you?
It was down a little bit, but then again, the types of movies that came out this year are vastly different. We talked about in the pre-show how, big summer blockbusters just weren't a thing. They all got pushed back. But that's not to say that some of the, the independent films or the ones that went directly to a streaming service weren't good. I think that the end of the year, like always, you get some awards contention movies that you're like, wow, that was really good. But it was just like, it felt like there was a gap or something missing in my viewing repertoire that I'm used to seeing that just wasn't there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting one. Tom in the chat asks, how many movies did you folks watch this year?
I actually just had this question for Aaron, so we know the numbers right off the top of my heads.
Yeah.
Our heads. I watched, last year I watched 655 films because I could not leave the house. I had nothing else to do with my time. 655, far and away a personal record. Of those 655, 99 were 2020 releases. Oh, actually, to be fair, about 15 of those I've seen since January 1st. So, but one thing I do want to, Aaron, what was your number?
It ended up being 117 2020 releases that I saw
Very
over the course of the year.
respectable.
Yeah, it's a little lower than usual, but not too much. And Andrew, do you know about how many movies you saw this year?
Roughly 55-ish.
Yeah. It's definitely a down year, but of course, a lot of that definitely makes
I did
sense.
want to quickly say on my thoughts on 2020. Part of me sort of selfishly enjoyed that everyone was stuck at home, because with two young girls at home, I don't get a chance to go to the cinema anymore because we have to get a babysitter. It's a whole thing, especially since the only time I can really go is after work when they're already in bed. It complicates things. And so I usually only watch stuff at home, and I have to wait 3 or 4 months for them to come out on digital.
Yeah.
In 2020, everyone was stuck in that boat. So I was kind of on equal footing, and I kind of like that. I'm so used to people seeing movies like Tenet 3 months before I do. And finally it was like, all right, I kind of get to be part of the conversation in real time.
Yeah.
Whereas the last few years, I've kind of been like, please stop talking about these movies. I can't see them for another couple months. So that's for like, I'll listen to the SIFPOT podcast, but like 3 months, 9 weeks or whatever after they come out, because I haven't seen half of these movies yet.
Yeah, and boy, with a lot of the things that have happened, you just wonder if same date streaming is going to continue to be common even after we're out of this. We'll see. That's certainly an unknown right now, but yeah, it's been interesting to say the least, and I'm excited to get into it, to talk about our favorites. We're going to kick it off with our favorite performances of 2020. We do not distinguish by gender. We just do our favorite 10 performances and kind of go around. We did say 10, right? We're going to do 10 of these?
Yes.
Yeah. 10, 5, 10. So 10 for performance, 5 for moments, and then 10 for best movies.
Correct. That's what I thought it was. So we'll go from number 10 to number 1, and we will count down our favorite performances of the year. Let's go ahead and kick it off with Jonathan. Why don't you start us off? What's your number 10? Sydney
Flanagan in Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. This is that a beautiful film, really understated, really quiet, slice of life. A woman needs to travel out of state to get an abortion because she's underage, her parents don't approve. And just seeing this process, mostly sort of unvarnished from any sort of political commentary. It's not telling you which way to feel about it. It's just, this is what her choice is, and this is what she has to go through to get there. And there's a 1 minute shot in the middle of the film where the title comes from, where she's asked from this therapist and the person at the medical clinic asking her, with the answers never, rarely, sometimes, or always, have you ever this? Have you done this? Have you had unprotected sex? Has your boyfriend ever hit you? And she just goes through this laundry list of items relating to her sexual history and her relationship. And it is really powerful stuff. And the shot just stays on her face for like 8 minutes. I've never seen Cindy Flanagan in anything before, but I will be keeping an eye on her because she was phenomenal in this. Really great.
Absolutely a great choice. One of my honorable mentions, and definitely that moment is the moment of the movie. So yeah, she's great. Andrew, what do you got at number 10?
This performance is from the movie that I was talking to John about that technically had a release in 2019, but every other time was actually 2020, and that's going to be for Caleb Landry Jones in The Outpost.
Yeah,
I have not seen. That's not my pick, but I like the.
Yeah, this is a very interesting movie. It's based on a true story of this base in Afghanistan that these U.S. soldiers are in, and it was. I think they said it was like strategically, it was the worst placed outpost in modern military history. Like, it was surrounded on all four sides by mountains, so everything was just a shooting gallery down into this base. And Caleb Landry Jones is like working alongside Scott Eastwood and Orlando Bloom, and he is giving a very realistic and very impressive performance. I think that it's a very harrowing movie, but it's also grounded in reality to where it's not glorifying like war or anything like that. It's showing what these guys really went through, and it's a very powerful movie. I really enjoyed it.
Very nice. My number 10, I think, should be an example to how many, or an indication to how many great performances there were this year, because I think this is a spectacular performance, but it made my number 10, and that's Elizabeth Moss in The Invisible Man, coming in.
Now, are we doing Trump rules today, or
no? Not usually with countdowns. We'll just kind of talk about them when they're on our list. But yeah, I assumed you guys may have this performance on there as well, because she is absolutely astonishing in this movie.
Terrific. And it was like the first big movie of 2020 I saw, and I had such high hopes for the year. I think this came out pre-pandemic, and it's great. It's one of the few like Universal horror remakes that's been good. Yeah, The Mummy, famously terrible. The last few Frankenstein adaptations been awful. This was excellent. She was so good.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on to number 9. Jonathan.
I had Sarah Paulson in Run. And I don't want to give a lot away, but her performance involves a lot of manipulation, a lot of emotional manipulation. And she's good. We know Sarah can play like crazy. And this might be like the absolute most evil or perverted character I've seen her play, certainly in her career. But it's an absolute real hatred fills your body when you watch her in this film, and she sells it in a way that's like your blood boils. It's like, she is so bad at this. Great film.
It's number 9.
It's a performance where you feel sorry for her because you know she's ill, like mentally ill, but at the same time, what she's doing, it's kind of like, did you ever see The Act on Hulu? Which is based on a true story of Munchausen by proxy. It's a lot like that, where you're like, oh, this person's ill, but you just feel so dirty, and it is a good performance. So it is really, and the young girl in the movie, I forget her name, but she is also given a really good performance as well. My number 9 is where I have Kenneth Branagh from Tenet. I think that he is actually the a lot of people were apparently down on his performance. And I think Aaron too, loved his performance. It's very theatrical, but it's also grounded in reality enough to where that over the top, evilness actually works. And maybe it's because he's working alongside like Elizabeth Debicki, and who is also given a stellar performance in this. And she was very close to making my list. But I think that Kenneth Branagh is actually the standout performance of the movie.
And just a shout out to them letting Elizabeth Debicki be tall in Tenet.
Yes, she is
thank you.
towering over those guys.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it always irks me to see her in other movies where they've obviously put her like in a hole or put the actor on
literally in trenches with some other actors.
Yeah,
yeah. Good choices. My number 9 is probably not on either of your lists, but I've got Jessie Buckley from I'm Thinking of Ending Things at number 9.
I haven't seen that one yet. It is on my short list, but tell us about it.
I get it.
She is great in this, and what she's being asked to do is kind of a very rare type of performance. She's being asked to carry some things that I don't want to spoil. But and honestly, the movie doesn't clearly spoil either. This is one of those movies where you kind of get to interpret it for yourself.
I don't think you can spoil that movie because whatever you'd say would not make sense.
Right. But I think I love this movie more than most, but specifically her performance is one I think we can all get on board with. I think she's really incredible in it. So
I have her pretty high on my list of the year. It's such a good movie.
It is really good. All right, number 8.
I have Vince Vaughn in Freaky.
Great choice.
The pitch for this is it's Freaky Friday, right? It's a body switching horror comedy genre mashup, and Vince Vaughn is like a stoic, monstrous serial killer who swaps bodies with a teen girl, and his performance has to embody both of those in both parts of the film, and somehow he pulls it off. It's one of the movies I think he was kind of born to play. Like he's good at like these kind of quirky comedy bits, and he got a lot to chew on here, and it's delightful. He is so much fun.
Yeah.
There's a scene in that movie that was so close to making my best moments, but it's the flirting in the back of the car scene is so perfect.
It's
so
like
perfect.
earnest, it's honest, and like I didn't feel weird or creeped out. I'm like, this actually it's like a nice tender moment, even though Vince Vaughn is like a 50-year-old man and he's opposite like a 19-year-old boy. This works. Yeah. How does it work?
It works because Vince is really good in this movie, and I think it's a very worthy choice for your list at number 8. What do you got, Andrew?
For number 8, this I don't know if this is going to be on either of your lists, but without this performance, this movie is garbage. I'm going to go with Russell Crowe in Unhinged.
No, I actually that was like maybe not on my honorable mentions, but I thought about it. I did think about it.
Did you? I mean, I guess you're right. You're not wrong. I mean, he's given a great performance here. It's just.
Yeah,
it's just the movie does not honor that performance. In a lot of ways. Yeah,
I think that it's a really good performance, and I think it's the saving grace for the film. Without him doing what he's doing and being as psychotic as he is, it just doesn't work. I think that he is doing something really good, not awards worthy, obviously, but it's good. It's a good performance.
Except here on the Sifties, where he's officially your number 8. So congratulations, Russell Crowe, on your awards.
Yeah, this is what he's been really looking forward to his entire career. Not Gladiator, not the Oscars for that, or
he's pumped right now.
Mind.
He's so pumped right now. Hey, Russell, we'll send you a statue if you want. Just reach out.
I for one, I'm not ashamed to say I thought the movie was fun. It is trash. It is pulp. It is kind of insulting, honestly, at how like violent it is for no reason. But I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot.
All right. In for my number 8 performance is kind of my first movie right on the border of 2020, 2021. I have Steven Yeun from Minari here at my number 8. Now, this isn't widely available yet. It will be very soon. I could
remind me which character he plays. Is he the dad or the kid?
He's the dad.
Okay,
yeah.
I assume. I just want to double check.
And so it's again, apologies if it's technically in 2021 for most people, but I think it did have a bit of a release in 2020, if not theatrically at festivals. I believe it was seen. So anyhow, Minari is spectacular, and a lot of that has to do with Steven Yeun. I think he's absolutely wonderful. He does this thing that I really love, where everything is understated but completely felt, and I think that's such a gift for an actor to have, the ability for you to feel everything they're feeling while keeping it so internal in many ways. So yeah, there's some really great stuff going on here, and I love Steven and Minari. So that's my number 8.
Nice.
Number 7's Jonathan.
Aubrey Plaza had two great performances last year, but my favorite was in Black Bear, which is this twisty, turny. It's a unique film that is best experienced unspoiled. I think every movie is, but this especially. And she does some really interesting stuff and some really intense scenes where she's like in a mood that's violent and emotional and vulnerable all at the same time. She's screaming, she's yelling, she's kicking, and you have to get into that headspace in the context of the scene she's in. It's difficult to describe it without spoiling it. It's sort of like a Russian nesting doll. Like she's a performance within a performance, and she does it so well. And there's a couple beats in that where I was like, "Ooh, that was very convincing." And she's great. And I think everyone knows her. She's been in a lot of sitcoms and a lot of TV shows, but I haven't seen her do drama and emotion like this deep before. And I think part of the reason I liked it is because it surprised me.
It's an incredible scene, and she is astonishing in it. She is very worthy of this conversation for sure. The movie overall was disappointing to me. I was disappointed by the end of the movie. But I
agree. I think there was definitely, I felt like they had things left to sort of to cash in on, and I didn't love the overall experience, but her performance was really powerful.
Definitely worth mentioning. Andrew, you're number 7.
I think honestly, my top 7 are movies I truly believe everybody should at least get nominated for the Academy. These are all stellar performances. My number 7 is Viola Davis in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. I find it to be a very transformative performance. Like, you barely recognize her. I think that she becomes Ma Rainey, and it's just a privilege to watch. This character is so unlike anything I've ever seen Viola Davis do. Very dour and not giving a crap about what anything anybody says. She believes she is and knows that she is this talented, character, and she knows she doesn't have to put up with anybody's guff. It's not my favorite performance in the movie. We're definitely going to get to that much later down this list, but I think that Viola Davis gives a stellar performance in this movie.
Very nice. Totally agree. It just struck me just to say, because again, with all the confusion of award season and that kind of stuff, there are some performances I've seen. I'm just going to throw out Malcolm and Maria as one of them that aren't going to be on our list, but that are probably going to get a lot of buzz in the next couple of months. And it's just kind of a weird thing of just kind of how we're doing it. So, but yeah, because you were talking about how all of yours are going to get nominated. I'm looking at mine and thinking, yeah, I think they might, but then there's so many that are yet to kind of be on the radar that I'm like, well, I wonder if they will. But we'll see. It's going to be very interesting. My number 7 is Delroy Lindo from Da 5 Bloods.
I got
haven't seen that one yet.
I got that one higher.
Good in this. This movie is definitely one to watch, and he's absolutely incredible. We'll save some conversation for him later when Andrew mentions him. Let's move on to our number 6s.
I have Pete Davidson in The King of Staten Island, sort of a semi-autobiographical picture about his upbringing, dealing with the loss of his father, and the stepdad played by Bill Burr, who could have also been in this conversation. I think they both sort of played off each other really well. But for Pete, this is sort of a breakout performance. Everyone knows him from SNL and from being kind of aloof, kind of all over the place. But this is sort of a focused, dramatic effort from him that had a lot of nuance. And I really appreciate it. I thought he was great in it. I don't know that he can repeat this. I think this is he's so good because he's kind of
himself.
playing himself. He's playing in his home territory, so to speak. So I don't know that we'll see him do this again. But for this situation, he was fantastic.
I mean, I hope he does. I hope he's got kind of that extra level. That's certainly, it's not unprecedented for somebody on SNL to have that extra level and actually turn into a great dramatic performer. So we'll see where it goes. It's so funny. I was just thinking, you mentioned kind of his general apathy, and he has this character on SNL. I forget what the name of the character is. Like, okay,
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, no,
you know,
he's great at that.
So one of my sons literally does this, and he's never seen that skit. Like
I bet.
anything you ask, anything you say, okay, okay.
Oh, Chad?
Okay. Yeah, Chad.
That
Yeah,
might be his name. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Chad.
I have a Chad.
Honestly, I'm going to say this. Chad is one of my favorite recurring sketches
It's
on
fantastic.
SNL.
It really is. It's fantastic.
Because every single time he goes on a crazier adventure that he just doesn't care about. Like he got transported to like Lion Witch in the Wardrobe Land. He's like, okay.
What do you got at number 6, Andrew?
This is where I have Elizabeth Moss from Invisible Man.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very interesting performance in the fact that she is making this traumatized woman seem so believable. And I think without her giving this performance to the level of, I don't know if she's crazy or not, to where like I was questioning if this was a sci-fi movie or if it's just a mental health movie. Like that's how good her performance is, where I'm going, oh, I don't know if she's just crazy or not, because it's that good. And my dog agrees. He totally loves the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, she's incredible.
We'll talk about it some more, but 100% agree.
Nice.
I'm going to put him up real quick while you guys are giving your list.
Sure.
You're number 6, Aaron?
Got to take some time for the dog. Let's wait till Andrew's back. We can do that. We can take a few minutes. We'll edit it out for the podcast, but the people in video land get to see a little.
All right, then.
Behind the scenes. Somebody in the chat says, John Paula in the flesh.
Hey, what's up?
Great to see the movie night host in action.
Screen name.
Discussing movies again. Yeah,
I have intention to come back to YouTube at some point. I
Me
was
too.
going to do that. I was going to do that in 2020, but I think, as we mentioned earlier, the sort of reprioritizing of things, and it just YouTube was not something I needed in my life last year, and I skipped the entire year. All of my channels didn't post once.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, the podcast, doing the live video podcast has been a savior for the YouTube channel for me too, because I just haven't been able to do the 5 things reviews like I want to do.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out what that looks like in 2021 and if I'm going to get back into those. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. Andrew's back. All right, so we'll get back into it. My number 6 is Kingsley Ben-Adir from Five Nights in Miami. He is astonishing. It sounds like Andrew is going to just consider every performance I say a little bit higher than me. But
you say 5 nights in Miami, or it's 1 night in Miami, right?
It is 1 night in Miami. It was so good, I multiplied it by 5.
Yeah.
Yes, it is 1 night in Miami.
Okay.
It is a great movie overall. I'm sure we'll talk about it more as the show goes on.
So which performance or which character is he playing? Because I'm not familiar with him.
Yeah, he plays Malcolm X. And everybody in this movie is great. I think he stands just a little bit taller than the other 3, but just a little bit. They're all spectacular in this movie. But yeah, I wanted to mention him. All right, let's go on to our number 5s. What do you got
number 5. This one might be an oddball for you two. I have Maria Bakalova from Borat subsequent movie film.
I don't think that. I mean, we don't like the movie as much as most people, but I don't think this is a horrible choice whatsoever. So yeah.
Well, I'm glad you agree at least on the merit of the choice, because she's fantastic. There's such a quality to the authenticity to her performance, especially when you learn that half of the performance isn't even in her native language, and she's doing things with real people and not breaking character. Like, these are situations that border on both cringeworthy and scary, and in some situations where one nice woman brings her into her home and like takes care of her, and she has to then simultaneously like turn around and betray these people because they're making a film that doesn't make them look great. The amount of detachment you can have from the real world to your character to pull these things off and look people in the eye with a straight face. It's not just an acting. It's like real world performance to a respect. Mm-hmm. And she's fantastic. There's something about it that it saved Borat, I think, for me. I think if it was just Sasha, it would have been more of the same, but her addition really, I think, helped in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think you have to give her the benefit of just how different and difficult what she is doing is than most actors have to do. And I think that make alone brings it into the conversation in a real way. So yeah, I have no problem talking about that performance in that way. So yeah, good choice. What do you got, Andrew?
Number 5.
Number 5.
This is where I have Frank Langella for Trial of Chicago 7.
Okay.
He was great at being a dick.
What a vile person.
Oh, he's terrible.
He does such a good job at making you hate him.
He's made a career out of that. Like, you go back to Frank's performance in like Dave from 25 years ago. I'm like, I hate this guy. Stop being such a jerk.
So strangely enough, though, apparently toned down from The Real Judge.
Yeah.
Apparently The Real Judge was even worse.
Was way worse.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I can believe it.
Yeah. But he does such a good job at it that I got to give him props. Without him, hating him that much, you don't root for the guys as much. Just his vileness is palpable.
No, I really wanted to see him like slap the face by the end of this trial. I just wanted to you're out of order.
Yeah.
Didn't quite get that satisfaction, but he's so good in it.
He is very good. My number 5 is Riz Ahmed. Sound of Metal comes in at number 5 for me. This is an absolutely astonishing performance. And he's asked to do, again, some things that are both different and more difficult than most actors are asked to do. And I think he conveys exactly what he needs to convey. His character is fully formed. You know exactly who that character is right from the beginning, which allows you to invest in such a deep way into what he's going through. Because of his performance, you also have that thing where you're screaming at him not to make the choices he's making because you care about him, the empathy that you have for him. But you also get it from his person. You understand, yes, that is what the character would do. And you've been there. Like, you can think of examples in your own life where you thought you knew what the right choice was and you were just wrong. And it's a great performance. And I think makes the movie. I mean, the movie is interesting in its construction and in its message and in its script, but I think the performance itself is what makes it that next level. So yeah, Riz Ahmed
completely agree. We'll talk about it more later.
Nice. It's just my lot to name performances that you guys have higher up on your list. That's just what I'm here for. All right, let's get to our number 4s.
I have Candice Bergen in Let Them All Talk. It's really difficult to overshadow Meryl Streep in a Meryl Streep film. But Mrs. Murphy Brown did a fantastic job of playing this like bitter and jealous friend of a famous author on this cross-Atlantic crossing. We actually talked about the Let Them All Talk here on the podcast a few months back, and she was a standout for me. I thought she was so good at it, and there was something about that like middle-aged woman that you don't see that character on screen that often. Like, those types of roles don't exist in Hollywood. Like average, everyday middle-aged women, and there was something really authentic about like her bitterness that rang true to me, and I thought she was great. Good choice.
Andrew, what do you got at number 4?
This one is a performance that's going to get overlooked, definitely for the award season. But I'm going to go with Omid Mimar from 7500. Joseph Gordon-Levitt has given a really good performance in this, a great performance, I should say. But I think Omid is given probably one of the most realistic performances I've seen in a really long time. He's not given a lot of screen time. He's more reserved for the second half of the movie. But whenever he is on screen, he is delivering a performance that I'm like, wow, I believe everything that this kid is doing right now. And for somebody as young as him to be doing what he's doing is also very impressive.
Nice. Good choice. My number 4 is Carey Mulligan from Promising Young Woman.
Excellent.
This is one of those movies, another one of the movies of this year where I'm just like, I want to tell you about how amazing this movie is, but I can't really tell you about how amazing this movie is without making it a little less amazing for you.
I went into this mostly cold, and I did not know even like the genre. I thought it was going to be something completely different. And I was like, okay, this is more serious than I expected, and I loved it. It was so fun.
And she's great, and that's why I have her at number 4. I think she's absolutely incredible in this. I think she will get some awards buzz, and I think it's deserved. She's pulling off something that is so of the moment and is elevated. There's an elevation to what this movie is doing, and yet she makes it believable. She makes it real, even though it's elevated, and that is an acting gift, and so I think it's worthy of a mention. So that's my number 4. On to our number 3s. 3 left, guys. What do you got at number 3, Jonathan?
We've already talked about her twice. Elizabeth Moss in Invisible Man was one of my favorites of the year. Certainly top 3. Everything we've already said. I think it's hardest to act opposite nobody. We always hear about actors complaining about acting opposite green screen is really difficult because you have nothing to even emote with. And she's like in an empty kitchen being pulled around by strings in some of these scenes. And so much of her performance is that fear and that dread. And not only that, but that inherent understanding that, like, I know I'm being harassed. I know I'm being stalked, and nobody believes me. And that sort of frustration and anger and fear all sort of mixed together make for a really compelling character. And it takes what is kind of a gimmicky premise, right? An invisible man into a really effective, like, horror film. And she's great in it.
Our first three-peat. Congratulations, Elizabeth Moss, for making everybody's list. And Jonathan has you at number 3. Andrew, who do you have at number 3?
This is where I have Chadwick Boseman from Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. I think I said this whenever we initially did the review for this movie, that I felt like I was sad because I knew this was the last performance that we were ever going to see from him. But I felt thankful that he he shared his gift with the world, that we got to see how good of an actor he was. And if this is his last performance, I mean, what a way to do it, because this was a stellar performance. That whole scene where he's doing the Levy knows how to talk to the white man and he's given his backstory was just bone chilling. It was
brutal. It really is.
Yeah, it was brutal, but you are locked in. It was such a great performance. I absolutely think this is one of the best performances. Obviously his best performance, but one of the best performances I've seen in a very long time.
He's incredible. You say obviously his best performance. I think you're right. I think it is his best performance, and that's fairly obvious. But man, has he done some good ones.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he shared his gift with the world, and it's sad to know that he's gone. But at the same time, that we're so lucky that we got to see him do what he did.
Yeah.
I think what's more interesting is he didn't share it publicly, but he knew he was terminal. Yeah. And when he was filming this movie, he had to have known this is probably, I don't have a lot of months left.
Yeah.
And he put it all out there, and it is absolutely like breathtaking. He's at my number 2, so we might as well just discuss him now. But yeah, he was so good in this. And I think there's a strong chance he wins the Oscar for this. I really do.
Yeah. He's still on my list to talk about as well. So yeah, we will continue to talk about him. My number 3 is Vanessa Kirby from Pieces of a Woman. I think she's doing astonishing work in this movie. I think the weight that she's asked to carry, especially during that opening scene, is a lot to ask of an actor, and I think she pulls it off wonderfully. I really bought into this movie because of her, and yeah, I think she's incredible. So she's my number 3.
Yeah. She was very close to making my list. It was just that I think that that first scene is so different from the rest of the movie. If we were going just off that first scene, yeah, she'd be number 1.
Yeah. All right. You said your number 2, Jonathan, was
my number.
Chadwick?
Yeah, Chadwick at number 2. Echo everything you guys already said. It's both impressive to watch him, and it was also heartbreaking to know that this is it. This is the last time we'll really get to see it. But it was so powerful, I think, because of that. But irrespective of his premature death, I think the performance itself was really quite phenomenal. And he's shouting and emoting and screaming and hitting these emotional extremes that are just really difficult to capture.
Totally agree. All right. Let's see. Your number 2, Andrew.
This is where I had Kingsley Ben-Adir for One
nice.
Night in Miami. As him as Malcolm X. It is it's so transformative. All those guys are. I need to look up their names, who they play, but I know it was Jim Brown, Sam Cooke, Cassius Clay, who's Muhammad Ali, and then Malcolm X. But every single one of those guys is just so good. I would not be surprised if every single one of those guys got a nomination, one for supporting or lead. It would make sense. It really would.
It's one of those things where, and by the way, we're going to do this as a full review on the podcast probably next week or the week after. So we will talk about this some more. But yeah, it is one of those casts where you're just like, oh, so you got the perfect person for every role and they hit it out of the park. Good job.
Yeah.
Like
It's just that easy.
It's just that easy.
Yeah. That's all you have to do. Okay.
That's all you got to do. Just cast the right people and have them hit home runs.
It was really close to making my list, but I'm gonna say it for best moment. The scenes between Sam Cooke and Malcolm X going back and forth philosophically and what their roles in life are is some of the most like enamoring and beautiful performances ever. It's crazy good. But I think like Aaron said earlier, I think that Kingsley stands just a hair above the rest of them, but they're all so good. They're all so good.
You're both making me regret not squeezing this in the last 2 weeks. I binged as many award contenders as I could since the first of the year, and this one just missed out.
My number 2, speaking of Ma Rainey, this is where I have Viola Davis at number 2. I think she's incredible in this. Well worth any attention she gets for it. Awards-wise, like you said, transformative is the word to use here. I think she's astonishing here. I don't know that I have a ton to add, but she has very firmly planted herself as one of the best actors working time after time after time.
She's certainly one of the best actresses in the last 20 years. She's been hitting it out of the park every time she's on screen.
She's incredible, and she's incredible in this. So that is my number 2. All right, our favorite performance of the year. Jonathan, your favorite performance of the year is?
Riz Ahmed in The Sound of Metal.
Nice.
I was transformed by this movie. I have deaf relatives. I've worked closely with recovering addicts. So these were 2 communities that I have personally seen firsthand. I thought they did them really effectively, and I think Riz's portrayal of someone going through that frustration and that anger of, you know what choice you have to make, but you emotionally are not there yet. And that battle between like intellect and emotion, he goes down the middle of that line so effectively because you're angry with him, but you empathize with him at the same time. And that whole experience of him going through basically the acceptance that he's going to lose his hearing and dealing with it like an addiction. He's addicted to hearing. And he plays like an addict as well as I've seen anyone. And it was really good. Really, really good. My favorite of the year.
There's an element I didn't talk about when I talked about that performance too, that I did connect to, in that if I had a moment, and I kind of almost did when I went through my health scare. Well, I say health scare when I died there for a second.
Don't undersell it.
Right. Yeah. I had tubes in my throat, and when I came out, I wasn't sure my voice was ever going to recover. Those first few months, I could only talk for a certain amount of time before it just was too much and got too tiring. I still can't really sing like I used to be able to. If I sing for too long, it starts to hurt. And I just thought of how much of my life is about communicating through my words, like voiceover and podcasting and radio. And like, I have chosen to make a life using sounds from my throat, and the idea of that to be taken away was terrifying. And so like, there is an element of this that kind of personally hit me on an interesting level. I'm very thankful that, it appears, my throat has made, if not a full recovery, pretty much a full recovery. So So yeah, but there was definitely that element of it.
Here's my aside on that. After visiting Aaron in the hospital, I had no doubt that he was going to be able to talk. He was a chatterbox in the hospital. He doesn't remember any of this, but he was a chatterbox.
Yeah. I was on drugs, guys. I was on a lot of drugs. All right, Andrew, what is your number one performance of the year?
This is going to go to Delroy Lindo for Defy Bloods. Honestly, I truly believe this is in the top 10 greatest performances of all time.
Oh,
I think that this performance is unlike anything I'd seen in a very long time. It's up there with like Daniel Day-Lewis and There Will Be Blood, like of how much he owns. He owns this movie. And all the guys in this movie are great, but seeing the emotion and the return of trauma long since gone that he's tried so hard to push down within him, seeing all of that come back to the surface over the course of this movie and how it just overtakes him. It's kind of like Bogart in the Treasure of the Sierra Madre, how you just see this craze, and there's a lot of parallels between Defy Bloods and Treasure of the Sierra Madre. There's a lot of parallels.
Spike has talked about that, about how Treasure of the Sierra Madre was kind of his blueprint for this movie in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and you definitely see that. But I think that Delroy's performance is so... It's like that dragon lust for gold. It's just, it's crazy seeing, and he has that part at the end of the movie where he's just doing that, just giving that monologue to the camera that you're just like, what am I watching? Nobody is supposed to be this good at acting. It's it should be illegal. It's honestly, it's blew my mind how good his performance was.
Very nice.
Yeah.
My number one is Chadwick. I have Chadwick Boseman in Ma Rainey at my number one. Chadwick is the second performance this year to make all three of our lists.
Fantastic.
Somebody in the chat was asking about how do they present an award to somebody posthumously. Posthumously, thank you. And I think the last time that happened was with Heath Ledger. Is that right?
Yeah.
At least the last time an actor won, I think.
Right. One of the main categories at least.
Yeah.
And they just do, and they have somebody accept for them, and that's just how it goes. I think we're headed that direction, and I think obviously you can tell since I have him at number one, I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah. We had him 3-2-1. I had him at 3, John had him at 2, and you had him at 1.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
I also want to quickly, not to toot our own horn, but 3 white guys, I think all 3 of our top 3s were people of color or women. And I think that's fantastic.
1, 2.
Wow.
You had to get all the way down to Frank Langella for me, my number 5.
I don't have a white guy in my top 10.
I had Pete Davidson and Vince Vaughn. That was it.
I'm just like, oh, interesting. Well, that's kind of cool. I
that's
didn't even notice
good.
that. Definitely wasn't intentional. I was
exactly. I was not doing that. I'm not trying to reverse racism. I think it's important to be cognizant of that. But if this is a reflection of what the Oscars might look like thankfully we might be past the Oscars so white, because this was a really diverse group of people.
I've had that conversation too, and I'm not cutting the Chadwick conversation short. We've talked a lot about Chadwick. I don't know that I have a lot to add that we haven't already covered. But I was talking with somebody recently. Actually, no, I posted this and was having conversations with people about that. I truly believe that they should do away with the gendered acting categories. I think it should be more nominations. Nominate 10 people. But just do best performances like we do here on the show. And the reason we do that is because I believe there really shouldn't be a ghettoization or a difference between, how we think about, how the genders do acting.
Would you still keep actor and supporting?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And I think there could be fun to do a best overall performance where everybody's included, but that's a little more gimmicky kind of fun thing to do. Whereas this, I just think is the right thing to do. We're also dealing with so many more gender issues in our society and the idea of what is gender and the construct of gender and how do you, determine
I think I understand. I don't know if I agree, but I understand at least the separation of genders in certain applications, sports certainly.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But acting is such how the heck does it matter if you're a girl or a boy when it comes to acting. Like, it is such a non-relevant aspect of a performance. I mean, it relates to the character, but you don't necessarily have to be that gender to play that character.
And so the main response in opposition to this that you will get, and that I did get, and that I've heard before, is, well, you know how it's Oscars so white, it'll just be Oscars so male. And it's like,
I don't know that that's the case.
Well, it might not be the case, but if it is, then we deal with, then we have to wrestle with it. Right now, we don't have to wrestle with anything, you know, because everything just gets nicely separated. And the only way the bias gets exposed is to expose the bias. And so I just think in a long-term fashion, that's the healthiest way to deal with these awards. And honestly, I think they should expand nominations for most categories like they have with movies. Especially directing is another one they should expand, because that is where you see directing is where you see an example of what non-gendered awards look like, right? Like, there has been a thing about why are there no female, directors usually in the nominations. So it is there, but I'd like to see it in the acting as well. So, and yeah, I was just looking at my list, and 3 of my top 4 are female performances. So, it's, I think it would be valuable to do. All right, there you go. There's our top performances of 2020. We will move on now to our best movie moments of 2020. This may be my favorite category. Sure, I love talking.
It's just fun.
I always love this, because these movies are not ones, at least personally, not many of them made my top 10. And I don't think many of these are also from my performance list either. These are just quirky little moments, and otherwise some of them forgettable films.
I will say, before we move on, I think if we were doing a consensus choice, Chadwick is obviously that choice. We all 3 had him right at the top of our list.
And then probably Liz Moss is the best female.
Yeah. So best movie moment, we'll play a little differently because we're going to nominate these movie moments, and then we will talk about picking one together. Now, I find it interesting. I actually listed 12 moments. So I may mention some afterwards that we didn't get to, just to kind of throw them out there. But 5 of them have already been mentioned by one of you two. So,
all right.
It's kind of one of those things, so let's go ahead and start the nomination process. We will go around 5 times and then pick one. So, Jonathan, what do you want to start with?
Let's see. My 5th favorite movie moment of 2020 was the 12-minute oneer from Extraction. Aaron, you and I actually discussed this on the podcast like almost a full year ago now. It was like last March or so.
Yeah.
And it was great. I think, generally speaking, Netflix action movies aren't always fantastic. They sometimes have a couple good premises, don't always execute. I think Extraction is a little better than the average, but that particular 1-minute sequence, which obviously is stitched from like probably 12 or 15 different takes, just the fluidity of the movement and the excitement of like going up and down through cars, over door, like it was a lot of fun. And I remember watching it kind of like, all right, this is fun. And then like 35 seconds into it, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. They're doing I was so excited when I noticed what was happening. I'm like, they're doing a one shot.
Yeah.
I leaned forward, I got into it, and I really loved it. It was so much fun.
After the 15th time they got hit by a car, you're like, man, this is brutal.
Yeah, right.
Andrew, did you do yours in like a 5-1, or did you do more of like a nomination kind of thing like we did with this?
I technically did a 5-1, but I'm good with just talking.
Yeah. Okay, we'll just continue to do kind of like a nomination thing. Feel free to rank them like as you do them. That's fine.
Yeah, I'll go from 5-1 just so.
I ranked it. I don't know if that was wrong or good. But
no. It's totally fine. What do you want to nominate?
This movie is. I don't know if either of you have seen it, and it's definitely not going to get the win. But I'm going to go with Trigon versus Darkseid in Justice League Dark Apocalypse War.
Wow!
Right over my head,
guys. You all, Aaron knows this, that I think that Flashpoint Paradox is the best DC animated.
Oh,
movie.
I see the poster now. I must have heard you wrong. I am familiar with the DC animated universe. I've actually started at the beginning last year, and I've been watching through. I haven't got here yet. This is a newer release, but
have you got to Flashpoint Paradox yet?
I haven't. No, I'm like the 13th movie, which I think is just before they started the shared universe section of it.
Well, Flashpoint was my favorite until Apocalypse War. This movie's just bonkers. It's so crazy. And then seeing Trigon versus Darkseid as a DC fan, I never knew I needed this until it was happening in front of me. And I'm like, oh my God, it's an old god versus a new god. And it's so much fun. Yeah, it was like made for me. It was beautiful.
Nice. Very nice. My first nomination is going to be the first painting moment from the movie The Painter and the Thief. Did either of you get a chance to see The Painter and the Thief?
No.
Okay.
No.
So I'll try to describe this without spoiling too much, although there's not a lot to spoil. This is a documentary about a woman who's an artist who has her gallery broken into and a couple paintings stolen. And they know who did it. They catch them. They put them away. And instead of seeking any kind of revenge, she actually develops a friendship with one of the people who stole the paintings. This moment happens after he sees the first painting that she paints after they become friends. And I'm not going to give away what that painting is. I think it's part of the emotion, the power of that moment. But it is an absolutely devastating moment of emotion, and it's so real. Again, this is a documentary, so this is camera catching real people in real situations. But I had to mention it. It was definitely one of the most impacting moments of the year for me. So that's The Painter and the Thief, the first painting moment, is what that is. So there you go.
I've added it to my watch list. I will check it out.
All right, what do you want to nominate next,
the backwards forward car chase from Tenet. I thought
Nice.
that was super cool on the first run through, and then when we saw it again in, I guess, reverse, it was like, this is all making even more sense. I'm still very confused, but I'm enjoying it. There was so many moments in this film that visually worked so well. I didn't always understand how it was working or why certain things had to be mapped out that way. But I think the sensation was always like edge of your seat kind of thrill ride. And that car chase was just a very unique way to do things. Some cars running in reverse, actors literally driving, looking out the back window in some cases. Like, it was pretty cool. And I really liked it.
I was one of mine that I was possibly thinking about nominating, and I'll just let this stand as the nominee, was the building blowing up twice moment from Tenet, where it blows up in forward and reverse. A very similar, kind of concept, but more kind of capsulated in a single moment. But yeah, I think this works as well for kind of a Tenet idea. Just the whole idea of a movie existing in forwards and reverse is just, it's so Nolan.
It's unique.
Yeah. Andrew, what do you want to nominate next?
Number 4, I have the galloping van from Onward.
Yeah, I had that as one of my possible nominees as well. Yeah.
I mean, it's just such a... I'm looking at my list now of best moments, and they're just moments that made me smile. They're just like, it just made me so happy. And it's such a clever gag that I'm like, I wish I would have seen that in another movie, but that is just brilliant. It just made me smile. Because the van became a character in that movie. It wasn't just a prop or a set piece. The van was a character. So seeing it gallop off was kind of beautiful, but also hilarious.
Yeah. Good choice. I'm going to nominate the ending of the movie Another Round. Now, this again may be one that you guys haven't had a chance to check out.
Have not yet, so please don't spoil.
So here's what happens at the end. No, I'm just kidding. I will just say there's a joy and exuberance in the ending of this movie. I think it's not a spoiler to say there's dancing involved, and I just did not see. I just did not expect this from Mikkelsen, and it's just so pure. There's a pureness about it that I love and will remember for a long, long time. So yeah, check out Another Round. It is definitely worth a watch. So
I think so. The one Heath Bar also agrees with you that it's the best ending of the year.
Oh, nice. There you go.
I like movies that stick the landing. That counts for a lot.
This definitely does literally stick the landing. Yes.
My third favorite moment is probably one you guys haven't seen. It's a movie that came out recently called Shadow in the Cloud, with Chloe Grace Moretz. It is a completely bonkers, like horror, action, comedy, confined location kind of script, and it's I cannot describe it. And I think for that reason alone, please watch it because it is so unique. It is so unlike most movies I've seen. And there is a sequence where Chloe Grace needs to climb on the underside of an airplane while it's in flight, just holding onto like rivets and handles while it's flying. And she has to save an object that's dangling before it falls. And it's sort of a high value thing and very personal to her. And I don't want to spoil any more than that. But it is such a crazy nail biting scene. And at the same time, it's like, this is impossible. This defies physics. It's sort of like a Fast and the Furious kind of feel to it. Like this, none of this makes sense. They can't chase a submarine with cars. Chloe can't be climbing on the underside of a plane like this. It's bananas. It's so fun and thrilling and bizarre and funny. And I had a lot of fun with this movie.
Great. I have not seen that, but now you've got me interested. I've heard 2 reviews and they both were very negative. So I don't know.
I loved it. Maybe it was just the mood I was in, but like it was such a weird pulpy mash of like 8 different things.
Sure. Yeah. No, I definitely can get on board with that. What do you want to nominate next, Andrew, for your third nominee?
The poking eye gag from The Croods 2. This movie had me in stitches. I'm not going to lie. This is the funniest movie of the year. It's the funniest movie of the year. And the poking eye gag that went throughout this movie, I was almost crying in the theater. I was laughing so hard. I was laughing in the theater harder than all those like 7 and 8-year-old kids that the parents took to see. Like I was the one that was like tearing up that theater. I thought this movie's brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a funny moment. That's great. I love it. Great choice. A lot of fun. Let's see. What do I want to do for next? Let's do the Rudy Giuliani moment from Borat. And I bring this up not because in many ways, like you were talking about things that gave you a smile or just like, oh, that's a crazy cool moment, that kind of thing. This is just one of those where it's the best movie moment because of its impact, just like the craziness of how newsworthy this moment was and how in the world did this happen. And I just like, there's so much about this that is just astonishing that I think it has to be mentioned in this category. As
I didn't even consider it, and I feel like such a fool because you're absolutely right. My jaw, I had heard about it going in, but my jaw was on the floor. Like, I cannot believe he agreed to this, and like, how can you be so? Oh my gosh, he was like a whisker away from being the president 16 years ago, and now he's just completely embarrassed in a straight to Netflix mockumentary. Like. Unbelievable.
It was something, and it's definitely worth a mention. So yeah, I think I'll nominate that for my third nominee. What's your fourth nominee, Jonathan?
This one is maybe, again, a film you guys haven't seen. It was a short 26-minute stand-up special from Dave Chappelle called 846. He released it for free on YouTube. It was, I think, technically the first concert of the entire post-pandemic year. He held it, I think, in his backyard in Ohio. It was free for people in his neighborhood to visit. And it's mostly him just frustratingly complaining about George Floyd and the 8 minutes and 46 seconds he had someone's knee on his neck while he died, begging for help. And Dave, I think, is one of those people that rises to the moment and speaks to the things we need to hear. And it was such an impassioned and an angry moment from him where he was just complaining, we need to let the streets speak for themselves. I'm not here to give my opinion. The streets will speak. And it was just like, I was blown away by the power of that message and the emotion in his voice. Because you could tell, like, he is tired of seeing this happen over and over again.
Yeah.
And it was just, if you're a fan of Dave Chappelle, you know that he has that ability to go into that well and pull out those threads that like really make you challenge everything we know about America. And this is one of those moments like, wow.
Yeah.
He did it.
No, good choice. Good choice. Andrew, what are you nominating next?
Number 2, I have The Reverse Fight in Tenet. I guess you can count both sides of it.
So we all had different forward reverse moments in Tenet.
Yeah.
I had the building, you had the car chase, and you had the fight. That's interesting. Yeah.
I almost had the fight, or I almost had the building. I'll say this: I almost put the building, but I don't know how they did the fight. I don't know how they did it. How did they film that? Like
that, I am genuinely confused by it, because there's moments where he's very clearly falling in reverse and getting back up, but the other character isn't. Like how they didn't just roll the film backwards, because one character is moving forward.
Yeah,
it was wild.
They definitely shot it both directions, and then used some editing tricks. Yeah.
It was really
crazy.
neat.
But it's up there for best movie moment.
All right, there you go. Let's see. What do I want to nominate next? Yeah, I'm going to do it. You already talked about this one. I'm going to nominate The Kiss in Freaky, which is just, it's one of those moments where I think, and we already talked about this. It's like, this is something that would have been played for cringe laughs, only.
I think that's what made it so effective for me, is I expected them to go for a joke.
But it's
and they played it completely earnest, and it was like, wow, this is actually kind of heartwarming. This is like a tender moment.
Yeah, the fact that they play it complete, and again, and no pun intended, except kind of, the fact that they play it completely straight is really interesting in this moment, because I think that allows for a real beauty of understanding what love looks like, no matter what the participants in the relationship look like. You know what I mean? And it's just, I was kind of blown away by this moment. I remember we talked about it on the podcast, and I was just like, this is
it was definitely, it kind of almost felt like this deserves a better movie. This moment is,
yeah.
It was sort of like it came out of a movie I wasn't expecting, that moment.
Yeah. So I'll nominate that. One more nominee each, I believe.
Yep.
Is that correct? Jonathan, what do you got?
The final concert in Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Good choice.
I am a huge fan of that franchise, and I thought this trilogy ended on such like a perfect, sweet capstone. I literally cried at the end of this movie, and I was like, this movie's not that great, but there was something about the poignancy and the unity of like everyone literally coming together and playing a song that I was like, that was really kind of sweet. I didn't think they were going to find a way to, like, how do you actually unite the entire world? Like, you can't. That's the unanswerable question at the heart of the last two movies. And they didn't really answer it here. It's kind of a cop-out. But the way they did it, it was just, I thought was really beautiful. And I was literally moved to tears in a movie that, like, I had no expectations for. So I really liked it.
Yep. Decent choice. Andrew, what is your final nominee?
It's got to be The One-Shot Birth from Pieces of a Woman. It's
good choice.
It's like the greatest opening to a movie ever, and the rest of the movie doesn't live up to it. But it's crazy because I've seen a few births working in a hospital, and this is just the most real thing ever. I think that they're giving great performances because it just seems so natural and even improvised, like the way that they're talking to each other and the way they're communicating. It almost feels like a different movie than the rest of the movie, because the rest of the movie does feel very scripted and like there's talking points and stuff like that. But this just seems so natural, and it's crazy that I'm sure there's always hidden cuts, but the way that the camera moves with the characters and the way that it's so captivating from the minute it starts to literally until you get to the title scene of Pieces of a Woman. You're just sucked in, and you're just like, oh, I can't stop watching this.
Yeah. Great choice.
I clearly need to watch this movie because this is another one that sort of slipped.
I mean, trigger warnings, trauma warnings. Like, this is kind of one of those,
I'm fine. You don't need to warn me.
No, I know.
655
I'm
movies.
Speaking to anybody else that may be hearing my voice,
That's fair.
I just want to make sure. Speaking of trauma, my number one, I shouldn't say number one, but my final nomination, because I didn't rank these, but my final nomination is for the restaurant scene in Invisible Man, for the movie moment of the year.
It's just
remind me again what happens in the restaurant scene. I don't want. I mean, it's just
there's a knife. We'll say there's a knife.
Okay.
She's meeting with her sister, right? She's a best friend of her sister. I think it's her sister.
It was her sister.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right. Okay. I got it now. It took me a minute. I couldn't picture it in my head, but yes.
I mean, it has stuck with me because there's just such there's such a suddenness to the like bang bang nature of what happens there, and all of a sudden you are left with the character just stunned by what's going on, and like it's so well done, so well presented. But I think one of the best movie moments of the year.
Well, because like as it happens, you're like, wait, that didn't just happen, did it?
Yeah.
Wait, that happened? That really happened? Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's a shocker.
I remember now that I know what you're talking about, because that didn't immediately ring a bell. I definitely remember rewatching it. I immediately backed it up, like, wait, how did this happen, and how quickly it just like it was. Yeah.
All right. So before we kind of have a little discussion about maybe what we want to pick as the best movie moment of the year, did either of you have any other honorable mentions you wanted to throw out there? I have a couple that I'll mention if you don't.
I did not know. I picked the 5. That was it.
Okay.
I think about it, but I don't.
Levy knows how to talk to white people. I thought that was really just that whole speech that he gives.
Mm-hmm. That was one you had already mentioned. The Sam Cooke versus Malcolm X.
Yeah, the Sam Cooke
part of
versus Malcolm
One
X.
Night in Miami is another one you mentioned that was in my list.
I'd like to throw out in Trial of Chicago 7. You were the first to ever accuse me of being racist. Then I'd like to go on record as being the second.
Yes, I had that one too. Yeah, that was another one.
I loved the beat with, I think it was Sacha Baron Cohen's character, where he said, "Hold on a minute, bud. I've never been police for my thoughts," or whatever.
Oh
is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been on trial for my thoughts before. That was really good.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I just watched. Didn't make my list because I had to submit them to you, Aaron, a couple days ago, and I watched it just last night. David Byrne's American Utopia, a concert film from the former lead singer of the Talking Heads. Visually stunning from an auditory standpoint. If you love his music, it was so much fun. But they do a rendition of Burning Down the House in like marching band formation. All the instruments are untethered from the stage. They're all moving around. It looks great. It sounds great. And that was so much fun. Like, you have to get up and dance when you watch one of those.
Nice. Speaking of dancing, I also had possibly thought about the final dance scene in I'm thinking
Prom?
of Ending Things.
Oh.
Yeah. As well as the dance scene in Palm Springs. There's a fun dance scene there too. So like this is a year for great dance scenes. And the Joe playing the piano into the zone in Soul was another moment that stood out to me. I'll just call it the fire moment in Minari stood out to me. In the tiny window moment in Mangrove was pretty amazing too. So yeah, I wanted to mention that one too. Of our nominees, what are you guys thinking? Any you think we can kind of gather around and
I feel like Tenet, we all at least picked a scene from.
Yeah, but different scenes, and it's like it'd be weird to give the best moment to Tenet for just being Tenet.
Yeah,
but inherently though, we all agreed that the qualifier that made them awesome was that unique sort of double.
Yeah.
Right, but that's a concept, not a moment.
I'm okay with the building blowing up, honestly, because that was so close to being the one that I chose.
Let me throw out a couple. The Giuliani moment is one
that was wild. That's absolutely wild.
You know, possibly kind of raises above the rest.
What about the birth in Pieces of a Woman?
That's another one but I'm not sure Jonathan has
I haven't even seen it, so I'll put that one out. But if you got the way you both spoke about it. I'm fine with the building and Tenet. Honestly, that was super cool.
We could go with that. I guess you're right. We all had Tenet on our list. I think that probably makes the most sense.
Yeah.
If we're going to kind of come to a conclusion, so we'll just say it. The building blows up twice in Tenet is the Sifty moment of 2020.
And I'm totally all right with that. That's
Now there was some super cool stuff in that film.
It is the one moment in movies this year that just was like I had that thing I love where it's just like, you know, the giddiness that you get while watching movies sometimes, and it's just like, what just happened? You know, like, yeah, it was pretty cool.
I think it's the part in the movie where you're really, even though it's the end of the movie, you're really getting a grasp on how the time reversal works. So you're putting together in your mind, like you see in Bravo Squad and Alpha Squad, I think is what it is, or Blue Team and Red Team, I can't remember. But regardless, you see them, the reverse, about to do something while you're thinking about doing something. You're like, wait, are they really going to try and pull this off? And then you see it happen. And you're like, I don't know how this makes sense, but it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen, you know?
Yeah. All right. Before we head on to the best movies of the year, a big thank you to our Sif Pop members. We appreciate you so much. Your Sif Pop bonus show is available for you to listen to. We talked about the crazy year of 2020 and the award season, how different it is. So you can check that out there, as well as what other fun perks you may have access to. If you've never looked at being a Sift Pop member, I'd encourage you to do so. Check it out, and you might enjoy some of the perks that come along with membership, or you might just want to support what goes on here. Either way, it's a very humbling experience for us to know you'll throw a couple bucks our way each month, and means a lot to us. So check that out at Patreon, patreon.com/SiftPop. And thank you. All right, let's do it. Let's count down our favorite 10 movies of 2020. We'll start at number 10 and go to number 1. I'll kick us off, and we'll go the opposite direction in honor of Tenet. We'll go in the reverse direction now. My number 10 is, and you may think this might have been higher considering my top 2 performances were from this movie, but this is where I have Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
I think that's fair. I think on the note of performances, they were both brilliant, but I felt like the movie structurally didn't quite impress as much. Like I can't describe it, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you're eating a Reese's peanut butter cup and you're a peanut butter person. It's like the performances were the peanut butter, but the encasing, just isn't your fit. That was a horrible metaphor. I apologize to my family, to my friends, to anyone.
It reminds me of a movie, at least for me personally, it reminds me of something like American Hustle, which I thought had brilliant performances, but the movie, I don't even remember what it was about.
Oh, the movie's garbage.
But I remember the performances were really good.
Yeah, it'll happen.
I'm not saying this was a garbage movie, but it didn't make my
No, but it is my number 10. So there you go. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Worth a watch for sure. What do you got at number 10, Andrew?
This is where I have The Outpost. Like I said before, it's a harrowing story of soldiers trying to fight against insurmountable odds, and it is the fact that it's based on a true story, and the fact that what happened actually happened it's shocking, and it's also very emotional, and makes you really just like, I can't believe these guys did this. Good for them.
Okay. Number 10 for you, Jonathan.
I have a documentary here, The Social Dilemma, which is a good documentary will make me change my life. And I immediately installed a digital wellness app on my phone to keep track of how often I use it. I set timers and grayscale modes to force me off my phone at night. I was doing really great for a couple weeks after I watched this because it transformed the way I thought about social media.
Yeah.
And I think we're all aware of its divisiveness and the way that it can sort of addict you. But this movie really delves into it on a psychological level and from just a technological level, speaking with some of the platform designers of Facebook. And I think they had the guy that originally started, was it MySpace or one of these old guard types? And the way they speak about their creation reminds me of like Dr. Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're aware, like we kind of we let Pandora out of the box, and I don't know that we can put it back in. If you use social media, if you're listening to this podcast, I have to assume you probably do in some respect. Check out The Social Dilemma. It'll legitimately change the way you use your phone, at least for a while.
Yeah, no, it
great.
did for me. I was already off Facebook. I had already deleted Facebook before I saw this, but afterwards I deleted Instagram. I deleted TikTok, which I think we mentioned either in the show or the pre-show. I can't remember. I deleted every social media app except Twitter, and that's because I find real community benefit in Twitter for the movie stuff.
See, for me, it's Twitter is the worst, and that's where I feel I get the most angry on Twitter. I get the most upset when I log in. It never helps my mental state, whereas Instagram is okay. TikTok, I always leave feeling fun and refreshed. Facebook, I generally don't go on besides to talk with family. I try to limit myself there. But yeah, this movie will get you to really think what am I doing?
Yeah, I just mentioned that because and I changed the way my notification works. I turned off notifications for email. One of the strangest. I never thought about doing that because I like keeping a zero inbox. I like making sure that I'm available, and I have found it so freeing to be able to check my email when I'm ready to check my email, and I'll deal with it then. And it hasn't ruined my productivity. It hasn't changed things, and it's allowed me to be more proactive with my time and not to be staring at my phone all day. Because every time a notification, comes on, this is definitely one of those docs that changes the way you interact with your phone. And honestly, I don't think it's political to say, with what we've been through in the last month, how much of that is due to social media. And I don't even think it's political. Say the idea of Donald Trump not being able to post on social media absolutely changed the atmosphere of social media. It's like one of those,
completely.
Just to know that a social media network has that much power over culture is what this documentary is about.
It's alarming and it's concerning. And I read more than a few headlines last week that said there was like an 80% drop off in misinformation after Trump's Twitter suspension.
Right.
And it's like, that's not surprising, but like, wow, it is still surprising the amount of it that like doesn't exist when you kind of cut the head off the chicken, so to speak. But on the email thing, I did a similar move like over a year ago where I changed my inbox to only notify me of priority emails. So only if it's from people in my contacts list. And it's just like, wow, my life is so less distracting. It's can't recommend it enough.
Yeah. Good choice. So my
Your
number
9. Yeah.
This is where I have Onward, the first Pixar movie of a 2 Pixar year. Onward is beautiful, fun, emotional, incredible casting, which I think really, honestly, when the history is told in years to come about the success of Pixar, I think casting will be towards the top of the reasons that Pixar has succeeded. Certainly storytelling, they understand that, but man, do they understand how to cast for the role and not for the famous name. In this case, the main 2 characters are very famous names. They just happen to be. But never once was I like, oh, that's Chris Pratt and Tom Holland. I was like, those are those characters. Those are those brothers. And this is what they're going through. There's a lot of fun in this movie and a lot of heart. Which
I completely agree. And I'm kind of upset that Onward got overshadowed by Soul in a lot of year-end conversations. Because I think personally, Soul is the better picture. And I will talk about it later, I know. But Onward for me was like, that was a great film. One of Pixar's probably in their top 10 or top 15, at least their top half. But I don't hear a lot of people talking about it because Soul, it was just like so dominantly.
Right. Yeah.
And we'll talk about that later.
Yes, we will. Number 9 for you, Andrew.
This is where I have Crude's A New Age. Funniest movie of the year.
I absolutely love this pick from you, and I need to go and watch this movie.
I mean, I
love it.
You don't even need to see the first one. The first one's the most meh movie ever. But
Can you do this? Can you do this whole review in Punch Monkey? Can you? Thank you. Oh yes, no, I agree. Yes, no, it's a good. It's a good review.
I'm going to look up the Crudes on IMDb. The parent guide. I don't know if you've used this before, Aaron. Your kids are grown up now.
Yeah.
But it's great, and I don't know if this is a movie I can watch with my 3-year-old daughter. But if I can, I will, because she loves
depends on
anything.
if you want her to speak Punch Monkey,
Yeah.
It's,
oh yeah, that's a risk you gotta.
Yeah, that's a risk you'll
decide
take.
if you're willing to take.
Yeah. It's PG. She's watched plenty of PG stuff before, but there's definitely some situations like I'm not ready to explain this to you yet. But
yes,
ironically enough, there's
sisters.
Ironically enough, there's some social media commentary in this one as well. So yeah,
why not?
Why not?
Yeah. So there we go.
Good choice.
That's my number
Good choice. Number 9 for you, Jonathan.
Palm Springs is a time loop concept that is a self-aware comedy, and I loved the idea of a Groundhog Day movie where the people have probably seen Groundhog Day. And they kind of took that premise. Andy Samberg's perfect. And Christina Melitoni, how do you pronounce her name?
Melati.
Militant.
All right, You both said it differently.
No, I know. I think it's Melody.
Melody. Okay. Well, anyway, great chemistry. I thought they have a really good, like, witty, almost adversarial banter that makes this premise work because you want to see them succeed, and they get to go through this time loop crisis together. And there's been a lot of Groundhog Day clones over the last 30 years. I think this one comes the closest, not to recapturing it, but to do something different with it. Yeah. And it made it unique, and it made it fun. And I wanted to keep exploring the possibilities that they had outlined in Palm Springs. And my favorite for sure.
There's another syllable in there. I think it's Milioti, I think is what it is. I think
I wasn't even going to try it, but
yeah, I think it's Kristen Milioti. I think is how you would say it, but I could be wrong.
The mom from How I Met Your Mother.
There you go. Yes, I'm sure. All right, number 8 is where I have Promising Young Woman. Really, really enjoyed this movie. Thought it was spectacular, and I'm excited for us to continue talking about it. Maybe higher up on somebody else's list. So yeah, this is a great film. What do you got at number 8, Andrew?
This is where I have Onward. Just echo everything we've already said.
Nice. Jonathan, what's your number 8?
Streaming right along. Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. We talked a lot about Sidney Flanagan's performance at the top of the show. And just watch it. I think this is one of those really powerful movies that Roger Ebert used to famously say that movies are a machine of empathy. And I think this is a perfect example of that. It puts you in somebody else's shoes for 95 minutes and lets you really experience the hardships that they're going through in a way that I obviously could never connect with. I'm a guy. But it brings you into a world, into a situation that's frustrating to watch, but I think important to witness. Yeah. And I really liked it.
Good choice. Number 7s. My number 7 is Da 5 Bloods. Again, we've talked a little bit about the performances in this. Definitely worth the watch. Chadwick's in this one too, right? Isn't Chadwick Boseman in this one too? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I get it. I'll watch it. Okay.
Really, I didn't really have it at number 7. I just wanted to make Jonathan feel bad about not having seen it again.
Can't see everything.
It's really great. It's definitely great.
It's so good. It's long. I will say that it's a long movie.
I think that's one reason why I haven't got around to it. It's always like, it's 9:30. I don't have time to watch. I could probably fit an 89, 90-minute film right now. All right.
Right.
And this has always been like 2.5 hours tomorrow.
Yeah. Andrew, what do you got at number 7?
This is where I have Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Speaking of Chadwick Boseman. Nice. I am a fan of plays being, converted to where they are, a film, especially August Wilson. I mean, I love Fences and I love Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. I mean, they lend themselves so well to being told on the screen. It's just and I think that it's also a great opportunity for performers to really, flex how good they are. Denzel did it in Fences, and I think both Viola Davis and Chadwick Boseman do it here in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
Good choice, Jonathan. Number 7.
Oh, also Viola Davis was also in Fences, wasn't she?
Indeed. She sure was. Won the Oscar for that, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
You might be a little upset with me, Aaron, but this is where I have Soul.
I'm not upset.
I know you're going to have it very close to the top.
It's going to be his number 1.
I did not completely.
Spoilers.
Yeah, don't spoil it yet. I didn't completely love the ending of this movie.
You're not alone. You're not alone.
But so much of the lead up and the exploration of the before life, I guess you can call it, was so unique. It was inventive. The animation style was gorgeous. This is the best looking animated film ever made, and I don't even think there's a contest there.
It may also be the best score ever in an animated film. The score
everything about this movie was gorgeous and beautiful. I think some of the cat switching body stuff was a little goofy, and it took me out of what was otherwise like a really poignant and serious narrative up until then. But besides some minor nitpicks, this was one of my favorite Pixar movies, I think, in the last, probably since like Toy Story 3. No, that was too long ago. What movie? Yeah. I don't know. It was really good. Like top 5 Pixar for me.
Yep. We'll talk about it more coming up at some point. Maybe number 1. You don't know. Is there air? You don't know.
What's on your shelf?
Galaxy Quest is going to be my number 1 pick for 2020.
It should be. It should be. I think number 6, right? We're on to our number 6s.
Yeah, that's correct.
My number 6 is Mank. This is where I have Mank, and we haven't talked about Mank yet. It didn't come up in the performance, didn't come up in the movie moments, but I really enjoyed this movie, and a lot of that has to do with the rat-a-tat-tat nature of the dialogue, of a lot of what's happening here, and a lot of that has to do with the production value of this movie and choosing to actually create a movie that looks like it was made in the era that it's, presenting. And that doesn't just go for it being in black and white. This isn't a simple matter of switching it from color to black and white. This is a matter of how the audio was captured, how the video was actually captured, the way the scene changes were done, the way the
they literally they did the cigarette burns in the corner. They literally reincorporated fake real changes.
So I was very impressed with this movie all around, and it's definitely one of my favorites of the year. So that's my number. What do we say? 6. Number 6. There you go. What do you got, Andrew?
This is where I have Justice League Dark Apocalypse War.
Oh,
it's
right on.
It's crazy. I love a DC movie that isn't afraid to make the heroes not immortal. There's so many of those, animated movies like, oh yeah, well, the heroes are going to make it out alive. Now this one, you don't know Jack. I mean, a lot.
I think
of
that's something that's been really cool with having watched through the first dozen or so DC animated films is because they're all in their own unique canon. They can kind of do whatever they want. And it's like in this episode, Superman is Russian. It's like, let's just play with that idea.
Oh yeah, Red War.
And there's some really cool concepts in the movies that if you are a comic nerd, take a deep dive because they've got this is like the 41st.
It's something like that. They're not all winners.
40, they've done, certainly not. But they have a bunch.
Yeah,
I'm glad to hear you liked it.
This is the best out of all of them, and I was surprised. I didn't think anything was ever going to beat Flashpoint Paradox, but Justice League Apocalypse War is that crazy to where you're like, wow.
Awesome. Very nice. Jonathan, what do you got at number 6?
Promising Young Woman. We've already talked about Carey Mulligan's performance. This was a really unique movie. And when we talk about movies sticking the landing, this is one that I was like applauding at the end. Like, yes, this is great. I am on board.
There are some people that don't like it, though. There are some people that have issues with the ending of this movie. But
I completely understand why they might. But for me, this movie took chances and they paid off.
Exactly.
And I loved that. So much of this I didn't see coming. Not only did I think it was a different genre, I was just like, okay, this is not what I expected, but like, okay, this is going in a direction completely different. Yeah. I don't want to spoil it a lot, but like, just go in, watch it, enjoy it. It is different. It is fun. And cathartic is probably a good word to describe it too. There's definitely a bit of catharsis when you watch sort of bad people have bad things happen to them. It's like, good. I like this woman.
You love comeuppance.
A little Schadenfreude, Schadenfreude going on.
Yeah,
we haven't talked about Bo Burnham in this movie at all.
He's great.
He's great. Yeah, so I wanted to shout him out as well. All right, so I think that brings us to number 5. We're into our top 5s. My number 5 is Palm Springs. This is where I have.
Hey, me too.
Nice.
Hey, all right. I wasn't sure if you guys were going to throw it in your top 10 at all, but I'm glad to hear you had it even higher.
Oh, it's great.
I love this movie.
It is fantastic, and the time loop genre, as it is now, was not something I saw coming, and it is. I'm so glad it has. Because there's so much to mine there. And this movie really mines it in some interesting ways. And the 2-person time loop is fresh.
I don't think has there ever been a time loop movie with more than one person?
No.
Well, I don't know that. Who knows? Maybe there has been some sort of that we don't know about, but not as far as the major ones that I'm thinking of. No, I don't remember one, but yes, it is definitely a freshness.
And they're not thrown into the time loop at the same time. It's like it's one of them is vastly more experienced, I guess is the best word, in the time loop than the other one.
Yeah.
And you get to experience the with that other person. You get to like learn as they learn from this person who's been there, done that trillions of times.
This movie is kind of like if they made a sequel to Groundhog Day, where instead of going to February 3rd, Andy McDowell got sucked into February 2nd. And it's like now we get to watch the entire movie from her perspective with Bill Murray as her like chaperone. And that is the premise of this movie. And it's so interesting. Like, okay, so you've already done this like for 1,000 years, but I'm just looping for the first time. And that entire idea, it was just so fun.
Well, and we haven't even mentioned J.K. Simmons and how funny he is.
Right.
He's great.
Yeah. The reason this kind of goes next level for me, though, is how much this works thematically, how much this movie works as an idea about relationships and marriage and the idea of, needing something new, being stuck in a rut, and all those kind of things, and how it deals with commitment. And it's just, I am really struck by how smart this movie is, not just sci-fi wise, but also philosophical. And that's one of the reasons I love Groundhog Day so much. Groundhog Day is a very philosophical movie. It is very much about, those
people
themes.
have written 20-page theses on Groundhog Day.
Right.
And
I think Palm
it's a
Springs
religion.
has that same thing. I think Palm Springs has that same thing going for it. And I really dig it. In the chat, somebody mentioned Russian Doll on Netflix, which is a multi-person time loop show.
And Phil has corrected us that
Mickey's Once
Upon a Christmas, Huey, Dewey, and Louie must all repeat Christmas Day together. So that is a multiple-person, multiple duck movie time loop.
So and also
is that they should have named? Wait, they should have named that movie "Duck Duck Loops." That's
oh man, that is such a missed opportunity. Come on,
that is an A+ dad joke, my friend.
Thank you. That's what I'm here
done.
for.
With Edge of Tomorrow, they're not looping at the same time. She's looping and she stops looping before him.
Correct. And there's a little bit of that in Russian Doll too. They're kind of not necessarily connected in the same way that this one is. But
that's too good.
but with Palm Springs, I don't think we've mentioned really having to wake up and relive one of the worst decisions of your life day after day after day.
Yeah,
that's what elevates that movie. It's not just a random day that is meaningless to somebody. This day is like a day that you would remember forever, and the metaphorical like element of that, of like what that means to like wake up knowing you've done something truly terrible and having to do that day after day. Oh, that's just such smart writing. It's such smart writing.
It really is genius stuff. I think that means we go to your number 5, Jonathan.
Tenet. And we don't really need to discuss much more of it. We've talked about it a lot today.
Sure.
Just that I didn't understand all of it, but what I did understand, I thought was really clever. And I think just visually and from an emotional angle, I enjoyed so much of what it was trying to do, even if it didn't always make sense. And I think it's more important how a movie makes you feel in a lot of ways. And this one made me feel good things.
I've often talked about how understanding what somebody prioritizes in their storytelling is really the key to understanding what kind of films they're going to enjoy. There are different parts of what it means to be a human. And, if somebody, like for me, if you've listened to how I review movies and what I end up liking, that it's almost always going to have to do with my mind. It's almost always going to have to do with the philosophy, the themes, the message. Like that's just how I work. That's what I prioritize. But for some people it's the excitement, it's the joy, it's the gut, that's
probably me. If I had to put myself in a bucket, absolutely.
And then for some people it's the emotion, it's the heart, it's the, I'm feeling deeply and those kind of things. Sure. And so, we're all different. And I think that's why it's so fun and valuable to talk about this stuff. All right. Number 4. My number 4 is The Trial of the Chicago 7. And I really enjoyed this. Listen, we've talked many times. Sorkin has my number. I just love the way he writes. And not necessarily think he's an incredible director, but I think he's really getting there.
He's an incredible writer. Yeah. And that goes a long way.
And that does go a long way. So Trial of Chicago 7 is my number 4. Andrew, what's your number 4?
This is where I have Defy Bloods. It would have been higher if the movie wasn't so long, if they could have found a way to trim it down. But at the same time, you're talking about how you guys are driven by like performances and metaphors and emotional stuff like that. I'm driven by performances. Like if I see a great performance, that really elevates a movie for me. And obviously Delroy is the best. But there's a lot going on in this movie. Maybe too much, but at the same time, what is going on is so powerful that it captivates you for the entire thing.
Yeah.
And it's also the best way to start a movie and introduce a bunch of characters. The way that they all meet.
I will watch it tonight. I'm going to watch it tonight.
Fine. He's convinced.
I am convinced.
Number 4, Jonathan, what do you got?
Borat subsequent movie film, which I know you both didn't really like.
No.
For me, this was, I think, the funniest movie of the year that I saw. Maybe it's just because at this point in my life, I'm just like an unashamed liberal. So I connected with the politics at least.
Sure.
Probably stronger than you guys might have. But just the execution and the gags and the absolute absurdity of some of these gimmicks to go into these locations, dressed as these characters, get up on stages, put yourself in bodily harm, and still make it really funny and poignant. And on the flip side, you feature some of these Trump voters and Republicans in a way that's humanizing. He's not necessarily just always dogging on them. He's trying to say, like, we're more alike than we're different. And I kind of loved that unifying message to it. And without spoiling the ending, everything kind of gets wrapped up in a really nice bow at the end.
It really does. It's my favorite part of the movie.
And it's just, I was like, oh my gosh, what? That's it was such a neat twist in a movie that does not need one at all. They could have just cut to black like Monty Python. Like, it didn't matter.
Oh, Usual Suspects. Awesome.
But there was something so cool about that connective twist ending. And I have to hand it to Sasha for managing to bring this character back. I think when we needed him most in such a turbulent election year when everyone was at each other's throats, and he found a way to make it interesting and funny, and I loved it.
Yeah, I'll just say the things I don't like about this movie have nothing to do with politics, but you know, there's just so much in this movie that feels it just feels very basic at times, and cringe humor is not my favorite kind of humor either. That's
me. I don't like cringe humor.
Obviously, this is a cringe humor movie. It's meant to be.
There's definitely a lot of it.
That's what the
and I'm not always a fan, but there's moments in here that I had to pause the movie because I couldn't hear the dialogue. Sure.
Yeah. That's fun. On to our number 3s. I will kick us off. My number 3 is One Night in Miami. I absolutely love this movie. I adore this movie. It is in my top 200 movies of all time now. So, in fact, my top 3, as should be indicated, from this year, all made my top 200 of all time list. It is fabulous stuff going on here. It is everything I wanted Ma Rainey to be, like as a play coming to the screen. There's something so compelling about these conversations they're having and the way they're having them that I never once thought that it was too claustrophobic or, I could feel this is obviously a stage play, not a movie. And I had those thoughts during Ma Rainey. As much as I love that movie, it made my list. But, as far as like a stage to screen kind of thing, man, this movie nails it. One Night in Miami.
On a 1 to 10 scale, are we into the 10s territory yet for your movies?
This would be in the 9s territory for me. I think
still 9s, okay.
Yeah, I think I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I don't have a personal top 200, but I've given, I want to say, I can actually just tell you right now, I've given out something like 135 10s over the years. Yeah.
So my next 2 movies will both be, I guess, in my technical top 200.
Yeah, it is. That's about where I'm at too. Honestly, when I look at, I consider 5s to be like transcendent favorites, and then 4.5s are all time favorites.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
that's kind of how I kind of distinguish those two. And 4s are still great movies,
Oh no, yeah, for sure.
So that's kind of how I rank that. But yeah, One Night in Miami is fabulous. What do you got at number 3, Andrew?
Tenet. It's stellar. It's unlike any other movie out there. I will say, out of all of Nolan's movies, I think this is the least accessible. Even after multiple viewings, it's still confusing, but that doesn't take away your overall how you're enamored with this movie. Just like you can't look away. You want to understand it because you think you know what's happening is brilliant, and it's just not semantics, but it's just the minute details that you're just not really all of that picking up or grasping. But as far as like the overall story and the overall themes of the movie, that all still makes sense. It's just I guess you could say the science behind it all. You want to understand more. But I think performances are great. I think that obviously the effects are unlike anything I've ever seen. It's a really good movie.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Totally.
I remember I wrote, it was probably after Dunkirk came out. I remember writing that of the mainstream blockbuster directors working today, Chris Nolan, at least for my money, is the smartest of the bunch. And he makes movies that are really complex and smart, and they challenge you, especially plays with time really well. In Dunkirk, he had 3 parallel timelines, but they were on different time scales. Mm-hmm. Tom Hardy's entire plot happens over an hour, whereas The Beach happens over like 3 days, but they're cut together at the same rate. And he just loves to throw in unique concepts in a way that is borderline accessible. And Tenet, I think, maybe goes a little too far into the complicated. But yeah, I'm totally with you. This is like a top 5 movie for sure.
Yeah.
What do you got at number 3?
My number 3 is The Invisible Man. We spoke a lot about it already. Elizabeth Moss's performance is a big reason why I loved it. But I think there was just some really cool visuals in this. It was genuinely scary and thrilling. And this was great.
Good choice. All right, on to our final 2. And I will continue the conversation about Tenet. It is my number 2 movie of the year. Obviously I just talked about the fact that if you want me to like a movie, activate my brain. And boy, does this movie activate your brain. And
how many times have you guys seen it?
I have seen it 3 times now.
I've only seen it the once, so I'm clearly I probably should give it another try.
I'll say this, even after multiple viewings, I'm still confused.
I only had it at number 5, so perhaps on a rewatch I'll appreciate some of the exposition because I'll understand it.
Right. Yes. Make sure you get your subtitles on.
Always.
No, I feel like I do. I feel like the first time I actually understood quite a bit. I wasn't able to. I think I understood structurally everything that was going on. I don't think I understood specifically how things worked. You know, especially the long. The longness of some of the reversal / straightforward thing. The idea that you would be going in reverse for 15 years to be able to do something. Some of these things require going in reverse for, decades, right? Like some of the things that they're setting up here. And so processing through that is a little more intense. Processing through the car chase, I didn't quite get completely the first time. I think I get it now. I think I kind of understand who's leaving when, quote unquote, when, how they're getting there, how the information is transferred. There's some really brilliant stuff with that car chase scene about where the object is and who knows what information and how they get that information, because you have to remember that he is, Kenneth Branagh is in the inverse time when he's getting that information so that he can continue to go backwards to intercept this thing. It's just in how that is transferred from person to person. It's really intensely complicated, but I think it makes sense. And that's when I come back to this movie. I was the second time. I was very curious if like holes would just start to form in my brain as I watched it again, and they just don't. They just don't. They may be there. Like if you like really do the calculate, like there may be some holes there, but I haven't found them yet. You know what I mean? So
the only criticism I've heard of the movie that rang true, but I didn't necessarily care about, is the sort of emotional stakes at the relationship at the heart of this movie with John Washington and I forget the lead female's name, but they
Elizabeth Debicki.
That there is this really strong motivation for him that's unearned, because we don't really know why is he risking everything for a woman he just kind of met. And I agree to an extent, but I don't know that I really care.
Yeah.
But that for me was the only blemish really, was that the relationship didn't really carry the weight.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyhow, love it. That's my number 2. What do you got, Andrew?
Number 2, I got Trial of Chicago 7.
Nice.
It's captivating. I love Aaron Sorkin. I think his writing is brilliant. There's not a lot of walkie-talkie in this movie, I'll say that. So Good on you for that.
A lot of city talkie.
A lot of city talkie. Yeah. I think all of these characters are great. Sacha Baron Cohen, Frank Langella, Mark Rylance. I love Mark Rylance in this movie. It's a very subtle performance, but it's definitely powerful. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I think, everybody's good. Everybody's good.
Yeah. I talked about it a little bit already. Definitely enjoy that movie too. What's your number 2, Jonathan?
Sound of Metal. This one I mentioned earlier for a lot of reasons. I think emotionally it really worked. I think from a performance standpoint, Riz was absolutely pitch perfect, pun intended. And I think just the concept of framing addiction recovery as getting over the loss of one of your senses is such a ballsy and unique way to do it. And more importantly, it frames that in a way that most people can understand. Because not everyone has dealt with addiction personally. Hopefully most people don't have to. But this is like, okay, what if you lost your sense of hearing as a musician? You can relate to how terrifying that would be. Your entire future is gone now. And how much would you do to get that back? And I think the way that it frames all of those conversations and thoughts was done so beautifully. My wife and I just watched it this week, and we loved it. It was definitely a big recommend for me.
Nice. All right, on to our number 1 movies of the year. And yes, of course, my number 1 movie of 2020 is Hubie Halloween.
Yep.
I love this movie so much. Adam Sandler is just incredible in it.
June Squibb.
June Squibb, just amazing. The t-shirt game in Hubie Halloween is just on point. Soul, of course, is my number 1. And I admit all my biases and still believe maybe this is the best movie of the year, even without my biases. It is incredible in so many different ways. Literally the only thing I have heard negative from people is how it ends. And that is the common refrain from people who say, well, maybe it's not that good, is the ending doesn't make sense, or the ending should have been different. They should have done this at the end, not this at the end, that kind of thing. And I completely disagree. I think the end is perfect. I think it's the only way to end this movie and really say what this movie wants to say, and to do it in a way that feels joyful, which I think is important. And maybe that's not important to some people. I think there are some ways to end this movie that are a little more morose, and that's okay. And maybe that works better for some people. But I think, and also because I've heard the discussions of why they chose to end this way, I just think there is they definitely considered the endings that you think would be better. They definitely considered those, and at the end of the day, decided to go this route. And I think they made a good call. But other than that, just the performances are perfect. Again, speaking about casting, the casting in this is absolutely astonishing. It's fun. I know you also mentioned, Jonathan, slightly that it gets a little too comedic for you with the cat stuff, or goofy, I think was the word
I was
you used.
when they went down that road, I was really worried. Like, I hope they don't do this for the rest of the film.
And they didn't.
And they didn't, thankfully. Had they, I think I would have disliked it more.
Yeah.
But certainly, so much of that worked emotionally for me. And then they kind of take this pivot to, let's kind of do a goofy body swap comedy where he's trying to eat pizza for the first time. Mm-hmm. And it's all right. This is fun, and I like it, and I'm sure kids appreciate it. But it thematically felt like they kind of lost focus for a bit. But again, a minor quibble in a movie was like my 7th favorite of the year.
Sure. And I think it's pretty in character with what the movie has done previously with the Tina Fey character, whether it be in the time before or whatever, there's very much a goofball nature to that character throughout. And there's an importance there too, to what that's saying about, you mentioned the pizza eating, that kind of stuff, about the theme of the movie and about what puts value into life. How do we define ourselves? Where is value?
It took me a bit to figure out that theme, the moral, because at the very end, there's a shot where you just see a close up of leaves in a tree sort of swaying in the breeze. And I literally didn't get it. And when the credits rolled, I was like, oh, wait, now I do. And I instantly was like, oh my gosh, I love the message of this.
Yeah, it is a really
it's message. Really powerful. It's great.
Yeah. So yes, that of course is my number 1. What do you got, Andrew?
Kemp Powers wrote Soul. Actually, my number 1 movie was also written by Kemp Powers.
He had quite a year, man.
Yeah. One Night in Miami.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I when I realized that the same person was responsible for 2 of my top 3 movies of the year. Like, I was just like, bring me more Kemp Powers, please. Like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Whew, I
And those are 2
love
very different movies.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, they are. One Night in Miami, it might crack my top 100 movies of all time. I mean, every single performance is stellar. The Sam Cooke, Malcolm X stuff is brilliant. Also, the Jim Brown and Cassius Clay before he became Muhammad Ali stuff is great. Everybody, here's the thing about this movie for me. It didn't feel like I was watching a movie. It felt like I was literally transported inside that motel room, and I was watching a historical act take place. Like,
right.
I felt like I was watching these 4 guys sit down and talk about life, love, where they see their future going, what they think that the responsibilities as black men are, seeing all this stuff. And I'm like, at parts of it, I'm like, I don't know if I should be watching this. Like, it seems like a really personal thing, you know, but at the same time, I can't stop watching. Like, I want to know, like, who these are all 4 of the, like, some of the most famous people of all time, and getting to see behind the curtains, so to speak, of who these people really were when they weren't in front of the camera or something. Like, especially seeing Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, seeing him, like, you know, not be the performer that he is, you know, like whenever he's just behind the curtains and like behind those closed doors and being himself, I felt like, wow, I'm really getting to see this insightful look into who these guys were. I can't say enough good things about this movie. It's probably going to crack my top 100.
I am so happy you loved it. We haven't really had a chance to talk about it. I know I had mentioned it on the podcast before how much I loved it, and I'm really excited that it's your like favorite movie of 2020. That's really cool.
Oh yeah.
We may repeat ourselves just a little bit next week when we review this in full, but it is not a movie I wanted to. It's not a movie I wanted to leave off the table for a full review. It's definitely one I want to kind of get in the record book, so to speak. So yeah, One Night in Miami is it's that good. Jonathan, what's your number 1?
A bit of a cheat, as I think Andrew, you might have described it as a filmed play, but Hamilton is my favorite movie of 2020.
Now, this is a great time to talk about this. Before you kind of get into it, I did not consider it as a movie. If I had, I almost certainly would have made my top 10, probably in the top 5. And we're going to talk about the overall rankings. There were many of our Sif Pop contributors who did consider it a movie, many who didn't. I let everybody have that individual choice for themselves. So we'll see how that all works out. But I'm glad that you did and that we're talking about it as your number 1 because it is that good.
It's so good. And my wife was obsessed with the soundtrack when it came out, 5-6 years ago. And I listened to parts of it and I thought it was pretty catchy. I loved the sound and the style and the pace and the speed of this sort of musical dialogue. But actually seeing it play out in real time, like the literal genius of Lin-Manuel he's like a tour de force of writing, and the performances here are excellent, but I think just the musical speed and the way everything just hits you constantly, beat after beat, song after song, it's fun, it's educational, it's moving, it's emotional. There's so many moments in this that I'll remember for a long time, and it was one of the things I wanted to almost stand up and applaud when it was finished. But just brilliant through and through, such a fantastic play, film, story, whatever you want to call it. I adored it, and my wife was pleased because she had already sort of placed it pretty high up before we even watched it.
I'm with John on this. The first time I saw it was actually when Disney released it on Disney Plus. That's the first time I actually saw it. I was blown away by Philippa Sue. She might have the greatest singing voice of all time, but also I think that she is possibly the main role in this play. Like, it is. Yeah, it's like you think it's going to be about Hamilton, but really, like by the end of this, you're like, oh no, it's about how she deals with him and stuff like that. It's it was such a great twist that I did not see coming at all.
Yep. I've spoken about my love of Hamilton many times. I did get a chance to see it in Chicago. And in fact, the Hamilton that I saw in Chicago is now well, not now because nobody's on Broadway right now, but is current, quote unquote, currently the Hamilton on Broadway. So yeah, we saw a really great performance of it, and I did get a chance to stand up and applaud at the end. I
bet. I'm very jealous you got a chance to see it. I mean, at this point, I think everyone has either heard it or hopefully has seen it if they've wanted to. But I can't understate like how different and transformative this is from a piece of medium. Like it is just so unique and so wholly different than like every other play that's come before, every other musical that's come before. And there must be like 3,000 words a minute sung in this film, and every one of them works like perfectly.
That get your right hand man back stuff is just incredible. I mean, the whole thing's incredible, and there's moment after moment of layered stuff in this where themes will come back musically, lyrics will come back and mean something different in a different song. You used the word genius. It is a word that is overused, but it is not a word incorrectly used with Lin-Manuel. He truly is exhibiting genius in what he does in this writing. So yeah, I have no problem with that number one at all.
Even
there
if
you go. Even if it's a little bit of one. You're not the only one that did that. Let's get to it. We like to finish it off with our top movies of 2020 from the entire SifPop crew. This includes writers at sifpop.com. It includes guest gurus on the podcast. We had 29 contributors to this list this year. That is the most we've ever had. Thank you to all who got their top 5 in. Everybody got their top 5 in. They were given points based on where they fell. So anybody's number 1 got 5 points. Anybody's number 2 got 4 points in that way. In order to make the official list, you had to be mentioned twice. And this year, 22 movies were mentioned at least twice. So there will be an official top 22
That's
this year.
Actually kind of incredible. So we had 29 times 5, which is what, 145 different movies, if my math is right?
It is
but only 22 of them mentioned twice.
There were a total of 57 movies mentioned that were sent in by our unique entries. And some really great movies will not get mentioned. You know, movies that we haven't talked about, like Nomadland, is definitely an amazing movie. Only got mentioned once by one person. First Cow is, obviously a great movie. Andrew has said many, many times how much he loves First Cow. Only got mentioned by one person. Somebody mentioned The Painter and the Thief that I talked about earlier. So there are all these great movies that did make people's list, but not the official top 22 for SifPop in 2020. So how it works is you have to be mentioned twice, and it goes by points first. And then if there's a tie in points, it goes by the number of people who mentioned that movie. So if it's a tie in points, but 3 people mentioned one movie and 2 mentioned another, that breaks the tie. If there is still a tie, it goes by the highest it charted on anybody's list. So if a movie was number 1 on somebody's list and the movie it tied with only got up to number 2 on somebody's list, then the movie that scored number 1 will get the nod. Even with 3 tiebreakers, there are still 2 ties in this list. They are both towards the bottom of the list. And we will start it off at number 22, tied actually for number 21. 2 movies tied for number 21, and that would be Borat's subsequent movie film and Mank. Coming in at tied for 22.
2 very similar movies.
Yeah, very similar.
Both mentioned by 2 people, and as is our number 20 movie of the year, which is Emma. Emma comes in at number 20, mentioned by 2 different people. Number 19, mentioned by 3 different people, is King of Staten Island, coming in at number 19 on the official Sifty list.
Nice.
On to tied for 17. 2 movies tied for 17. This is our other tie. This was Uncle Frank and Ma Rainey, both tied at number 17. And I think some of that has to do with the ability of people to see it. Could be. But yeah, so that's tied for number 17. No more ties as we count down the top 16. In at number 16, maybe a little bit of surprise, Ben Affleck in The Way Back. Did either of you guys see The Way Back?
I did, and I really liked it.
I did too. I have no problem with this being.
I
on
remember
the list.
liking it, but I don't remember much. Like I remember his performance, and his dealing with alcoholism and stuff. And I know that's what Ben Affleck actually has been public about dealing with in real life. I'm like, wow, that's actually a really personal movie then. So
yeah. So The Way Back comes in at number 16. 3 people mentioned that. In at number 15 is Another Round. I spoke a little bit about this one with Mads Mikkelsen in the best movie moments of the year. A couple people mentioned this one. 3 people mentioned our number 14. It is Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, which we've spoken a little bit about on the show. That comes in at number 14. Number 13 is Minari. Which, of course, we had a few moments to talk about Minari on the show. That is in at number 13. 3 people mentioning that. 4 people mentioning our number 12, including 2 of them on this show having it in their top 5. This is where One Night in Miami is going to land in at number 12. And again, I think it might have a lot to do with not a lot of people have seen it. So, but 4 people did have it mentioned, and it did score a number 1 from the very lovely Andrew. So that is number 12. Number 11 is The Invisible Man. 4 people had that in their top 5 as well. So that is number 11. And we are on to the top 10. Here we go. Number 10, a movie we haven't talked about, Wolfwalkers. This is an animated film available on Apple TV Plus, and worthy of this ranking, I think. It's really, really good. We just did not have a chance to talk a lot about it. But it is in at number 10. It was on 4 people's top 5. On 5 people's top 5, our number 9 is Onward. This is where Onward comes in at number 9, including somebody having it at number 1. Our number 8, 2 people had at their number 1 out of 5 people total. This is where Sound of Metal comes in at number 8.
And that would have been, I actually submitted my list before I saw it, because I sent this to you, I think, 4 days ago.
That's true, yeah.
And I saw the movie only 2 days ago. So that would have probably ranked even higher because it was my second favorite of the year.
That's true. Yes, it probably would have jumped. In fact, if you had it at number 2, well, I'd have to know kind of the rest of your list, but just based on another 4 points for being your number 2, that would have moved it. Let's see, where's it at now? Well, I would have moved it up one spot. So
good enough.
Yeah, good enough. It would have tied it with. Like a complete tie. It would have complete tied it with Da 5 Bloods, which is the current number 7. Da 5 Bloods had 5 people on their list. In number 6 is where Hamilton ended up. Now, this is, again, an interesting one. But yeah, 3 people had it as their number 1. 6 people overall had it on their list.
And you two both liked it, but chose to exclude it deliberately. Is that right?
I did. I'm not sure about Andrew.
I didn't put it on my list because I didn't really think of it. It probably would have made my list. Yeah.
Yeah, I specifically made the decision not to include it on my best of lists this year.
Normally, I probably would have agreed with that decision, but with such a lack of like big tentpole films, I felt like this was one of the only movies I scored a 10 last year. I have to include it, even if it isn't technically a narrative feature.
Listen, honestly, I have no problem with anybody that does put it on their list, obviously, because it originally was planned to be a theatrical release too.
Yeah.
It wasn't always supposed to be just streaming. So yeah, I have no problem with that. It comes in at number 6, and we are on to our top 5. Here we go. Number 5. 8 people had this in their top 5, scored a total of 23 points. 1 person had it at number 1. Trial of the Chicago 7 comes in at number 5 in 2020. And at number 4, 9 people had it on their list. 25 points total. 2 number 1s. Promising Young Woman comes in at number 4.
These are all excellent films. I don't have any complaints.
Yeah, the Sif Pop peoples, they do a good job. They do a good job. Coming in at number 3, 9 people had it on their list. 28 points total. 1 number 1. Tenet comes in at number 3.
It's interesting that it was only 1 person had it at number 1, but a lot had it in the top 5.
Yeah. Also interesting, our number one and number two. Number two had 13 people have it in their top 5. Number one had 14 people have it in their top 5, which is almost half the contributors had both of these movies in their top 5. But they are really not close in the points. Number 2 with 38 points, 2 number ones is Palm Springs in at number 2.
I was wondering where it was going to land on the list. Yeah. That's way higher than I thought.
And then number 1, 14 people, 54 points, 5 number ones, 3 number 2s. Soul.
Hubie Halloween.
Hubie Halloween is the number 1. So Soul is the number 1 Sif Pop movie of the year. And yes, obviously I'm pleased with that. It was my number 1 as well. But it seems to be a very common thing among the Sif Pop crew to put it up there. And honestly, fingers crossed, Academy, you can nominate this for Best Picture. There's no rule against it. You can go ahead and do that. Everybody will love it.
That's happened before. Toy Story 3, Beauty and the Beast, they got Best Picture nomination.
I think Up as well got a Best Picture nomination.
That was the first year they expanded to 10, I think.
And that is another thing that Soul maybe has in its column is Pete Docter as well. Is the Academy has a history with Pete Docter. So there you go. Congratulations to Soul, and thank you so much to our amazing Sif Pop contributors. We appreciate you, and thanks for sticking with us on a long Sifties podcast.
2 hours, 12 minutes. This is a good run. Yeah, thanks for hanging out.
We did it though. We did a podcast, guys. We ranked stuff. It was a lot of fun.
I love ranking. I am such a ranker.
Yes, you are. You are ranked. That is true.
I love it.
That's not what I meant. Thank you so much for joining us today for Sif Pop. It is part of the Studio DNA Podcast Network. You can find out more about other shows on the network at studiodna.media or by searching Studio DNA in your podcast player. Huge thanks to Andrew for hanging out with us again today.
Thank you, buddy.
Huge thanks to producer Phil for producing the audio and video show.
Thanks, Phil.
An extra dose of thanks to Drew for putting together the graphics for this big show.
Big golf clap.
And thank you so much to Jonathan Paula for joining us for the show again. Jonathan, where do you want to send people? What would you recommend?
You're very welcome. I just hit up my letterbox. It's the only thing I update these days. Everything else is toxic, and you should stay away from those social platforms. Letterbox.com/John Paula, JONPAULA. I'm trying to review more often. Sometimes if I have a few minutes, I'll just write a couple hundred words, whatever. But and I'm just ranking, always listing.
Always ranking. That's right.
I just published my 20 top 10 as a list just before this podcast went up. So I think it's probably the exact same thing we just heard. But if you want to see it on list form on Letterboxd, it's there.
There it is. I've really been enjoying getting more into Letterboxd, joining kind of full force. It's been a lot of fun. Lots of ways to continue to hang out with us. You can leave a comment, rate, or review at Apple Podcasts, or you can email us feedback@sifpop.com. And much love and gratitude to our Sif Pop members for giving monthly to make Sif Pop a real thing. Support starts at $3 a month, and you get access to every bonus episode we record. We try to do those weekly. And you can check those out again at patreon.com/SifPop. And finally, if you're having a good time, your movie-loving friends will probably like it too, so make sure you let them know about it, and that listening is much easier than subjectively ranking artistic expressions. We will be back. We will be back next week, probably with One Night in Miami and another movie to review, and we'll see you then.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thank you. The sun has gone down on Jonathan Paula. The sun has set.
I've been toying with the exposure slider the whole show. Like, I got to keep myself bright. And we started the show, it was fine. And then in the middle of the show, there was just bright sunshine, like a halo over here.
Thank you to those who hung out with us on the video, the live today.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. We know there's other stuff going on. In fact, I'm sure, Jonathan, you're interested in how Brady's doing.
Don't tell me. Don't say anything.
I would never. As if I know.
All right, well, good. Well, some people would. Some people,
right?
Oh, man,
I've got it up here in the corner. Brady is currently 32 for 33 with 7 touchdowns. I have no idea.
Great.
And Andrew, you've got the Chiefs still, right? You lost the Saints, but you're kind of a Chiefs fan.
Yeah, they're playing tonight, 6:40.
Yeah, go Chiefs, I guess.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about. Are you sad to lose Breeze?
Well, you're a Saints guy, right?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Breeze retiring it's a sting, But whoa, what a run that guy had! So
Yeah, for
powerful.
sure.
Indeed.
Oh, Aaron, I saw Ted Lasso on Apple TV.
Oh, nice. Did you like it as much as I did?
Love it. It's
so good.
so good. So
it is
fun.
so good. It's so good. Yes, thank you guys for hanging out. Really appreciated the conversation too that was happening in the live chat. We love you guys a ton, and we will be back live again next week. So we'll see you then.